Machine gun! Machine gun!
Fly night, you're a fly and you're an ant. Duh! You wanna see some magic?
You better run for your life.
Straight past the tutorial and not picking up the health potions or the fishing rod because we're not a pussy old fam.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Yeah. Rewind time.
We soon come to regret not picking up the fishing rod or the healing potions, and we also miss out on the first spell of the game, and we might have missed out on it forever. To get the first spell, we need to kill this mob right here, but we can't kill him without magic, so we're going into the dungeon with no magic. This challenge is very unique because right now we don't actually have any source of damage, and even when we get our first spell, we won't have any source of mana regeneration. We pick up our first spell, the Piranha Plan, and now I'm going to tell you why spells in this game are so interesting. A spell such as this isn't just a summon where you summon a plant that helps fight. This plan attacks you, it attacks allies, and it attacks the enemy. You need good positioning and good placement to make good use of this plan. And as we learn throughout the challenge, this plan with perfect positioning can trivialize some spells in this game are very unique, but there's no spells like another. It's not like Skyrim where you've got basic spells that just do damage and you've got like 3 versions, you've got the lightning, you've got the ice, you've got fire. No, this game, every spell is unique. There's not a lot of them, but some spells are designed to do damage, some spells are designed for utility, and some spells are just designed to break the game. However, a wizard does not give away his secrets, and I am not going to show you how to break the game yet, but first we must get the spell at the start of the game. Unfortunately, and unplanned in the planning of this run, I couldn't actually go back to the tutorial area. I thought this was because I just missed the campfire, but looking back in my recordings after the run, I figured out I did pick up the campfire, and I learned some things that are very interesting in this run, but I haven't given up hope yet of going back to the tutorial to get the basic starter spell. But right now, with only our single spell, it was going to be pretty hard to go back. We do also pick up this wind spell, which I wish I actually tried out more because it can deflect projectiles, which I realised near the end of the game, and it could have been pretty fun for the next boss. But now it was time to fight first boss in our run. Loads of people say this boss has a unique design.
That's a very interesting design choice. Let's just call it a thing.
This is the big peanuts! This is the big
shit.
peanuts!
Come on, guys. Censor that.
Oh shit.
It's a penis.
Yeah.
This boss is very interesting where you have to jump up a ledge to hit it, but the problem is that it'll throw bombs, spikes, and try and hit you off back down, and when you fall, of course you fall into plants and take a ton of damage. And our only hope of beating him was getting our plant to hit him, but could our plant even hit him? After a couple of tries, we finally put the plant close enough to hit him, and we realised the true potential of the plant. Of course, this is a gimmick fight, but even though the boss can't move and the boss can barely damage our Venus plant trap, actually it doesn't even damage the Venus flytrap because it keeps on shooting spikes at us instead. It means that this boss is totally trivialized, but other bosses in the game can also be taken advantage of using magic. After this boss, we get our third spell of the run, and probably one of the best spells in the game, Roots. These roots will shoot out the ground, hitting enemies multiple times, dealing really high damage. Sometimes only one roots hit them, sometimes multiple roots hits the enemy. And when you get loads of the roots hitting the enemy at the same time, you can rack up really high damage numbers. We also enter the next area, the swamp, and we have finished 1/3 of the game. 2 more bosses to go. We enter the swamp, and the swamp has loads of items for us. First of all, we pick up the druid set just because the wizard hat looks pretty nice. We pick up the spider scroll, which lets us spawn spiders. And we also do a damage test of our new root spell. The new root spell does a lot of damage, but it does also use a lot of mana. So we won't be using it until we find a way to recharge a ton of our mana. We also get the first death of the run, where I managed to trap myself between my only plant and an enemy wasp. I thought I was actually being pretty smart putting the plant down to block the doorway, until the wasp just flew straight over it. We carry on through the swamp to another swamp area, but we find this pretty cool ruins. We test the spider spell. It seems to be a spell for tanking, and we pick up another spell for spawn. We don't use the spell in the game, but it seems like a more melee hybrid spell, where it's a melee range cast that infects a limb on the enemy, and when you pop the limb, the infection spreads and it does a ton of damage over time. We also pick up this ring that lets us sidestep. We use it a little bit, but it's not that good for the run. And we also find the first use of the spider. You can actually jump on top of the spiders to make little jumps that weren't possible, much more possible. I continued on and I found some NPCs that wanted me to take this castle with them, and I tried to, but my spells are far too weak and I did not enough damage, especially for how low my mana was. So I just managed to run past them, and I used a skip that I found and I tried to speedrun the game. After failing the skip a couple times and actually getting chased down a ledge by a wasp, like a really high drop, and not only once, but this happened twice. I eventually figured out how the skip worked. I killed some enemies with a piranha plant. I got a new ring that we weren't gonna use, and I continued into the boss.
You have no mana, bitch! You have no mana! Get the fuck out of here! Let's go!
After our first attempt at the boss, we realised just killing it with basic spells would be impossible without any source of mana regeneration. So I decided to go back to the start of the game to pick up the fishing rod so we can get some mana fishes. You may ask, how do we go back to the start? And this is where the power of spider stacking comes in. I figured out in my first playthrough that you can just stack spiders on top of each other and create stairs to create skips or to even go out of bounds. After taking forever to get up there, I reached the door and I have the realization that you can't go through the door. I thought at this point in the game that I just missed the bonfire at the start, but I haven't. You're not meant to go back to the tutorial. I mean, when you enter the cave for the first time, you don't drop down into the cave. You enter next to the bonfire. Where I was right now, the game wasn't even meant to let you get there. So why would it let me go back through the door? Without the fishing rod, we've kind of screwed ourselves. We can't spam cast spells just to beat bosses. We have to be tactical. Our mana bar is limited now. We can't have fishes that just regen our mana. If we did get the fishing rod, we'll be able to store 6 fishes in our inventory that regen about half our mana bar, which will give us a total of 4 mana bars, which still might not be enough to beat the boss, but with the right rings and spells, it would have definitely been possible. But was it possible now? Well, before I actually went to go and get the fishing rod, I decided to try fighting the boss with the piranha plant, and I found some interesting results. The boss just aggroes onto the piranha plant. We don't need a stationary boss to get countered by the piranha plant. A melee boss is also easily countered, and any melee weapon once the aggro has been taken, and then we can just sit back and watch it happen. However, the boss did put up a good fight because the boss has slashing attacks which does a ton of damage to our plants, but his piercing attacks does very little. His magic attacks can't even hit the plant, and the best thing is once our plant can die, we can just spawn in a new one. We can spawn in so many plants that our damage potential is insane, and then we can just sit back and watch the fight happens. When he kills the plant, he actually bugs out, so it's super easy to get him to aggro on the next plant you spawn in. And even with the right plant placement, we can get this guy to miss all of his jumping attacks, reducing the amount of slash attacks he can do, making this boss fight even easier. The first time I did this was before I got the fishing rod, which I thought I could actually get, so I purposely died here so then I could go and get the fishing rod and try and beat him normally with spells. The next attempt afterwards, I died because I spammed too many spells and I ran out of mana. The last attempt, I decided to be more conservative with my mana and we eventually won. By using the ring that I said I would never use, I got a new ring that we weren't going to use, and I started using it because it increases your spell damage by a good amount, increasing our piranha plant damage by a lot. But it's not really worth the cost. It doubles your mana cost. That's why I said I wasn't going to use it with spells like roots. But with summons, this just means the fight goes quicker because we are guaranteed to win with enough patience. You might think we've cracked the code to this challenge run. I mean, the piranha plant counters basically every enemy. However, the final boss is ranged and is magic. Even though the plant doesn't take a lot of magic damage, the final boss would never get in range of the plant for it to hit, which means that the challenge could be over unless we find a new source of damage or a source of mana regeneration. We have reached the final area of the game with one boss to go. I hate this level. This area is just really linear.
It's the smell.
The loot here is not that good. We do get one of the heaviest and strongest armor sets in the game, but we don't really care about that because we're a mage. So I just decided to skip the entire area by using spiders. I try a couple ways to skip the area, using the boats in the middle and using spiders to jump to the other side of the riverbank, but in the end I just figured out that the easiest way was to go to the end of the river and use the gate itself to go to the lever to open the gate. When the gate is open, the water moves and the boats start moving. I decided to jump into the river so I can respawn nearer to the end of the riverbank and I can go on a boat to the final area. This hornet guy tries to attack us. I don't know, I didn't even talk to him throughout the game, so I don't know why he's trying to kill us. I just decided to use a little bit of wind magic, a little bit of trolling to get him to drown.
Get wrecked, you fat scrub man. I'm gonna go fuck your wife now.
Finally, we open these big cathedral doors, run past a couple more enemies, and we're at the final boss. We have reached the final boss in Flyknight, and it couldn't be a worse matchup for us. This boss is a mage, which poses a lot of threats to us. First of all, magic does very little damage to this boss, and later on we find certain spells do no damage because of the high resistance this boss has. Also, this is a ranged boss, which means certain moves like our piranha plant will be ineffective if this boss aggroes onto it. If the boss aggroes onto the piranha plant, it will never get close enough for the piranha plant to hit it, making this impossible. I decided to do our first attempt on the boss using the piranha plant and wind magic. The plan was simple. If the boss aggroed onto my piranha plant, I would have to use wind magic to either take aggro back or push the boss back to my piranha plant for damage. After testing this, we figure out the wind spell is ineffective on the boss, but we figure out the piranha plant actually has a bit of potential, dealing high damage when compared to other spells because it does physical damage. But it's super difficult getting the boss on top of the piranha plant, and while we're trying to lure the boss to our piranha plant, we can take loads of damage. Since we're in melee range, it's really hard to dodge spells when they come out at close range. I decided we needed some upgrades, and we've actually missed a spell, so I go back to near the start of the game to get a ring that prevents damage from allies and a spell called the Twister that spawns in a tornado. I decided not to pick up this spell because the root spell is usually a better version of this, but the tornado actually has a cool interaction with this boss that I wanted to test out more. This ring that prevents damage from allies is actually really good for a spellcaster and might be one of the best rings. It stops your spells from damaging yourself. This doesn't work on the piranha plant, but it works on any other spell, like the tornado, the roots. Even though this game doesn't have a lot of rings, we have to make do with what we got, and using unique interactions like this is going to be the only way our mage build is going to be powerful enough to beat this boss. I decided to try and fight the boss again, and we make the discovery that the tornado does so little damage that it does no damage to the boss. Usually it will do a ton of ticks of damage, ranging from 1 to 5 damage, but this boss has so high magic resistance that it nullifies each tick of damage, making it take no damage from the tornado. If we had to beat this boss, we couldn't use damage over time effects, and we will be forced to use higher damaging spells like the root spell or the now inaccessible fireball spell. This attempt with the boss was not in vain though, even though the tornado tornado did no damage. We managed to rack up a lot of damage with our piranha plant by baiting the boss into it over and over. However, over time we would take hits and we would die before we managed to kill the boss. We either need to find a new way to kill this boss, or we need to get good. Luckily, we did find a unique way to beat this boss, using the spiders. I was going to use the spiders to deal damage. By shooting the spider ball at the boss, you deal a little bit of damage, but I was hoping that it did physical. But in the end, it didn't do nearly enough damage to beat the boss. But after testing this, I figured out you can detonate the boss's traps, which made it super hard to push the boss towards our plant using spiders. And you can even use spiders as a shield and push the spider into the boss, blocking any spell it casts. This is super good. It means we can beat the boss fairly consistently without getting hit. We do get hit throughout the fight, but we could definitely beat it without getting hit. And this was on our first try after trying the spiders, and we easily beat flyknight. In the end, this challenge run had a lot of twists and turns, but the best spells were the summon spells. The piranha plant destroyed every single boss, and the spiders gave us a lot of utility in blocking attacks and getting over ledges we weren't supposed to. After beating the game, we go and talk to the vagrant fly, and we enter the surface.
This is why real-time cutscenes are superior. FJJJJJJJJJJJJJ Earth.